Something happened last night that you were never supposed to hear about until the right moment. A conversation took place behind a closed door. A truth that had been sitting quietly beneath the surface finally came into the light. And strangely enough, the person connected to that conversation was the woman who once stood between you and your person. You may have thought her chapter was finished. You may have believed that whatever happened in the past had already been settled, forgotten, or pushed into a place where it could no longer affect your future. But sometimes a story does not end when people stop talking about it. Sometimes the final piece of a story arrives much later. When everyone involved has changed enough to understand what they could not understand before. Last night, something shifted. It was not necessarily loud. It did not need to be dramatic. It may have happened through a simple conversation, a message, a realization, or a confession that had been delayed for far too long. But whatever form it took, it carried an unexpected update about the situation that once caused distance, confusion, jealousy, disappointment, or uncertainty between you and your person. And this is where the story becomes different from what you expected. The woman who once came between you and your person is not necessarily returning to take something away from you. In fact, the unexpected update may reveal that she is finally stepping out of a space she occupied for too long. There are moments in life when we assume another person is our greatest obstacle, when the real obstacle is actually misunderstanding. We look at someone and think, that person ruined everything. We look at circumstances and think, if only they had not been there, everything would have worked out. But sometimes people become part of a story for reasons we cannot see at the time. You may have spent a long time wondering what she knew. What did she say? What did your person believe? What happened when you were not there? Why did things suddenly change? Why did your person become distant? Why did they hesitate? Why did they seem to care and then pull away? Why did another person have so much influence over something that felt like it belonged only between you and your person? Those questions can stay in the heart for a long time. But something about last night suggests that an old chapter is finally being revisited, not to reopen the wound, but to explain it. And there is something you need to understand before you hear the rest. You do not have to fight anyone for what is genuinely meant to remain in your life. You do not have to compete. You do not have to prove that you are better. You do not have to become someone else. You do not have to chase someone who is capable of recognizing your value. The truth has a way of revealing itself when people become tired of pretending. Your person may have spent a long time trying to understand their own decisions. They may have carried regret. They may have wondered whether they listened to the wrong voice at the wrong time. They may have remembered moments involving you that they never admitted mattered. And perhaps that is why last night's development is so important, because the person who once influenced the situation may now be saying something completely different, something unexpected, something that could change the way your person remembers the past. Imagine a conversation where the past is finally spoken about without excuses. Imagine someone saying, "I need to tell you something." Imagine the silence that follows. Imagine your person realizing that something they believed for a long time was incomplete. Imagine the woman who once seemed like the center of the problem finally revealing that there was another side to the story. That is the energy surrounding this message. Not revenge. Not humiliation. Not competition. Truth. And truth does not always arrive in the form we expect. Sometimes truth arrives quietly. Sometimes it comes through a sentence that someone has rehearsed in their mind for months. Sometimes it comes through an apology. Sometimes it comes through an admission that says, "I should have told you this earlier." Sometimes it comes through a person finally taking responsibility for their part in something that caused unnecessary pain. And sometimes the greatest surprise is discovering that the person you once blamed is no longer the person they used to be. You may have wondered whether your person still thinks about what happened. There is a possibility that they do. Not because they want to live in the past, but because unfinished emotions have a strange way of returning when life becomes quiet. Enough for people to hear themselves. Your person may have remembered your conversations, your expressions, your patience, your absence, the things you said that they dismissed at the time. The things you never said because you were protecting your dignity. They may have remembered how differently everything felt when you were around, and perhaps they finally understood something that should have been obvious from the beginning. You were never asking for perfection. You were asking for honesty. You were asking to be respected. You were asking to know where you stood. You wanted something genuine, not something built on confusion. And maybe your person did not understand that then. Maybe they were influenced by fear. Maybe they were influenced by someone else's opinion. Maybe they were trying to satisfy expectations. Maybe they were afraid of making a decision. Maybe they were simply immature in the way they handled their emotions. Whatever the reason, the outcome affected you, and you deserved clarity. That is why this update matters. Because when someone who once stood between two people finally speaks differently, the entire meaning of the past can change. Perhaps she has realized that what she once thought she was protecting was never hers to control. Perhaps she has realized that her involvement created confusion. Perhaps she has recognized that your person needed to make their own decisions. Perhaps she has moved on with her own life and no longer wants to carry the responsibility of being part of someone else's emotional story. Or perhaps she has simply reached a point where she can finally tell the truth without fear of what the truth will change. Whatever the exact circumstances may be, do not allow your imagination to turn this into another battle. This is not about defeating another woman. This is about releasing yourself from the belief that you must defeat someone to be chosen. You do not. Your worth is not determined by another person's decision. Your future does not depend on another woman's insecurity. Your peace does not have to wait for someone else's apology. And your heart does not have to remain trapped inside an old story. Something happened last night, but the deeper message is not about what she did. It is about what you are becoming. You have survived the uncertainty. You have survived the unanswered questions. You have survived moments when you wondered whether you imagined the connection. You have survived the silence. You have survived the disappointment, and through all of that, you have learned something important. You cannot force clarity out of someone who is unwilling to be honest. You cannot force timing. You cannot force love. You cannot force another person to Understand what they are not ready to understand. But you can choose peace. You can choose dignity. You can choose to stop carrying responsibility for decisions you did not make. And that may be exactly why this unexpected update feels so powerful. Because perhaps the story is finally moving without you having to push it. There is a difference between chasing an outcome and allowing truth to reveal itself. You may have spent so much time wondering what your person was doing, what they were thinking, or what someone else was saying about you. But now the energy changes. Now the question becomes, what does your person do with the truth once they have it? That is the part that matters. Anyone can hear something, anyone can feel regret, anyone can remember the past, but growth is shown through action. If your person truly understands what happened, they will eventually have to decide how to respond. Maybe they will reach out. Maybe they will apologize. Maybe they will explain. Maybe they will finally say the words they avoided. Maybe they will simply begin behaving differently. And perhaps that is the unexpected part of the update. It may not be about someone returning dramatically. It may be about someone finally understanding. There is a powerful difference between being missed and being understood. Someone can miss you and still repeat the same mistakes. Someone can think about you and still be afraid. Someone can care about you and still make poor decisions. But when understanding arrives, something changes. Understanding creates responsibility, and responsibility creates action. Your person may be entering that stage now. The woman who once came between you and your person may have said something that forced them to confront a reality they had avoided. Maybe she admitted that she had misunderstood you. Maybe she admitted that she was acting from insecurity. Maybe she revealed that she had only known part of the story. Maybe she told your person that they had to make their own decision. Maybe she even encouraged them to stop running from something they knew they needed to face, whatever the exact words were. The important part is that something has shifted, and you should not underestimate the power of a changed perspective. People sometimes spend years defending a decision because admitting they were wrong feels painful. But eventually, the truth becomes heavier than the pride protecting the mistake. That may be what is happening now. Your person may be reaching the point where they can no longer pretend they do not care. They may be asking themselves questions they avoided before. What if I handled things differently? What if I listened to the wrong person? What if I misunderstood them? What if I let fear make the decision for me? What if the person I pushed away was actually the person I needed to understand? These questions can change everything. But there is another message here for you. Do not sit around waiting for someone else's realization to validate your life. Your life is happening now. Your healing is happening now. Your growth is happening now. Your future is being built now. If your person returns, they should meet a version of you who knows their worth. If they apologize, you should be able to listen without losing yourself. If they explain, you should be able to hear them without forgetting what you experienced. If they ask for another chance, you should not feel obligated to give it simply because they finally understand. A second chance should be based on changed behavior, mutual respect, honesty, and your own comfort, not pressure. That is part of the transformation in this story. You are not waiting helplessly for a person to choose you. you are becoming someone who chooses what is healthy for your own heart. And that changes the entire dynamic. The woman who once came between you and your person may have had influence once, but she does not have to have influence over your future. The past does not automatically receive permission to enter the future. You get to decide what comes with you. You get to leave resentment behind. You get to leave comparison behind. You get to leave old questions behind. You get to stop asking why you were not enough, because another person's confusion was. Never proof that you lacked value. Read that again in your heart. Someone's inability to choose clearly is not evidence that you were unworthy of being chosen. Someone else's fear is not a measurement of your worth. Someone else's insecurity is not your identity. Someone else's opinion is not your destiny. And perhaps that is the real surprise hidden inside last night's update. You may have been expecting news about her, but the deeper news is about you. You are no longer standing in the same emotional place where the original situation happened. You have changed. Your perspective has changed. Your patience has changed. Your boundaries have changed. The way you understand love has changed. You may still care. You may still wonder. You may still feel something when your person's name comes to mind, but you are no longer willing to lose yourself trying to hold on to someone else. That is growth, and perhaps your person can feel that difference. Sometimes people realize what they had when the other person stops chasing them, not because silence is a game, not because distance is manipulation, but because space allows people to hear what they were too distracted to hear before. When everything becomes quiet, memories become louder. A person may remember the kindness they overlooked. They may remember the conversation they never finished. They may remember the way you supported them. They may remember how safe they felt with you. They may remember the difference between attention and genuine connection, and they may begin to understand why your absence feels different from the absence of everyone else. That does not guarantee a particular outcome, but it can create an opportunity for honesty, and honesty is where real relationships begin. If your person returns, let them return with truth. Let them explain. Let them take responsibility. Let them show consistency. Do not settle for vague promises simply because you missed them. Do not let nostalgia erase reality. Love can be powerful, but healthy love also requires respect, communication, accountability, and trust. The woman who once came between you may have played a role in the past, but she does not have to become the villain of your entire story. Sometimes people make mistakes. Sometimes they act from fear. Sometimes they misunderstand. Sometimes they hurt others because they are hurting themselves. That does not mean you have to excuse what happened. Forgiveness and access are not the same thing. You can release anger without reopening every door. You can wish someone well without inviting them back into your life. You can understand someone's motives without approving of their behavior. And you can move forward without needing anyone to admit that you were right. That is freedom. Perhaps last night's unexpected update is the beginning of that freedom. Maybe your person learned something that changes how they view the past. Maybe they heard a confession. Maybe they received a message. Maybe they had a conversation that made them realize how much time had been wasted. Maybe the woman who once influenced them finally said, You need to decide for yourself. Those words could be more powerful than anything else, because the moment someone realizes they are responsible for their own choices, the influence of everyone around them becomes smaller. Your person has to make their own decision, and if they choose to come toward you, it should be because they genuinely want to, not because someone pressured them. Not because they are afraid of losing you, not because they feel guilty, not because someone else told them what to do, but because they have looked honestly at their heart and decided what they value. That is the kind of decision worth receiving. There may be a message coming, there may be a conversation, there may be an explanation, there may simply be a shift in behavior that you notice before you hear the full story. But whatever happens next, do not rush. Let the truth unfold. You do not have to chase every clue. You do not have to investigate every silence. You do not have to interpret every small coincidence. You can remain grounded. You can let people speak for themselves. You can observe actions, and you can protect your peace, because there is something beautiful about reaching the point where you no longer need to know every detail to know that you deserve better than confusion. Maybe the unexpected update is not what you imagined. Maybe it does not involve some dramatic confession. Maybe it is simply a person saying, "I was wrong," and sometimes those 3 words can carry more weight than 1,000 dramatic promises. I was wrong, I misunderstood, I should have listened, I should have trusted my own judgment, I should have spoken to you directly, I let someone else's opinion affect my decision, I regret the way I handled it. These are not magic words. They only matter if they are followed by changed behavior, but when someone becomes capable of saying them sincerely, it shows growth, and perhaps your person is finally entering that place. You might wonder why this took so long. That is understandable. When we are hurt, we often want answers immediately. But people do not always mature on our timeline. Some lessons take time. Some realizations require distance. Some people have to experience the consequences of their decisions before they understand them. That does not mean you should wait for them. It simply means their journey is theirs. Your journey is yours. And maybe your paths will cross again from a healthier place. Maybe they will not. Either way, you are still moving forward. That is the part you should remember. You are not stuck. You are not forgotten. You are not behind. You are not less valuable because someone once failed to recognize what was in front of them. Your worth existed before their realization. Your worth remains whether they return or not. And if they do return, they should not be returning to rescue you. They should be returning to build with you. That is a completely different kind of connection. A healthy connection does not require one person to save the other. It requires 2 people willing to communicate, grow, listen, respect boundaries, and make thoughtful choices. Maybe that is why the past is resurfacing now, because before something new can be built, sometimes the old misunderstanding has to be acknowledged, not worshipped, not repeated, acknowledged. The woman who once came between you and your person may now be looking at the situation differently. Perhaps she has her own life. Perhaps she has learned her own lessons. Perhaps she has realized that trying to control another person's heart never creates genuine security. perhaps she has finally accepted that your person has to decide what is right for them, and perhaps that acceptance is the unexpected update. The person you once feared might be the permanent obstacle, may no longer want that position at all. That can feel strange, it can even feel unreal, because when someone has been associated with pain for so long, it is easy to believe they will always represent the same thing. But people change, circumstances change, and sometimes the person you once feared becomes the person who unintentionally helps close the chapter. Imagine that, the same situation that once caused separation becomes the reason truth finally emerges. The same conversation that once created confusion becomes the conversation that clears it. The same person who once influenced the story becomes the person who finally steps away from it. Life can be complicated like that, but you do not need to control the outcome. You only need to remain honest with yourself. If your person reaches out, ask yourself how you feel, not what everyone else expects, not what the story says you should do, not what your past self wanted. What do you genuinely want now? Do you feel safe? Do you feel respected? Do you see change? Do you trust their actions? Do you feel peaceful around them? These questions matter, because love should not require you to abandon your inner stability. If an old connection returns, it should return differently, otherwise, it is simply the same.